Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! In 2005, I worked as a research assistant through a temp agency at an industrial refrigeration company. I have been there about 6 months, had created new innovations to help make the research technicians' jobs easier, and found a problem in an ice maker that saved the company millions in service calls and buybacks. McDonald's was their largest client. The research technician I worked for was a senior technician. He was a funny guy, but had a large ego. Been with the company since graduating high school a little over 30 years. He was 49 at the time then. And the only reason I remember was because they held a 50th birthday party for him. Remember that. After that party, he came in on Monday morning bragging about taking a drunk female coworker home. And about other things they did. His conversation was overheard by another coworker that was trying to go out with that female. A few days later, I was called into the HR to give a statement. I told him I played it down to try to not get him in trouble, which he didn't, to the dismay of many. About a month later, I got a call from my temp agency saying my assignment had ended, and I was okay with that. I knew how it was working through a temp agency. I would be off 2 weeks tops, then be offered a new assignment unless I found a better job in the meantime. So one day I went back just to have lunch with friends I made working there. And the senior technician flipped out because I was there. I mean, he made a huge scene, so I left, not wanting to start any problems for my friends. So later asked him if they could find out why the senior technician threw such a big fit. They found out the senior technician had ended my assignment because I participated in the investigation a month earlier, even though I covered his rear as much as possible without lying to them. He had made up a pack of lies to tell his boss and only waited so it wouldn't look like retaliation. The man had a big mouth, so couldn't help but to brag about how I got railroaded. So I was rather upset, to say the least. At the time, that was one of the best jobs I ever had. It had great people. Even the senior technician didn't seem like a bad guy at all. What the senior technician had also forgotten is that I know most of his dirty secrets. I had a flash drive. At the time, they didn't have a cloud or a server to store documents, and you used multiple computers depending on which lab you were in. I hadn't reformatted it yet, and it had all my Word and Excel files. So I fired off a few emails to his bosses showing where he had manufactured data on tests he had performed. All with the data sets I still had. And it led to an investigation into him. He tried to explain it as just a disgruntled ex-employee, which yes, I was. But facts are facts, and I had been stabbed in the back. He even contacted me asking why I was doing this. Why was I lying to get him in trouble? What? Wait 1 second. Who lied about who here? And I told him as much in very profane language. What really happened is over his time with the company, he had held many positions, including sales. He made a bunch of relationships, and when some of these friends wanted units, they would contact him. He would then take new units off the line for testing, then sell that unit as damaged at a used price, plus a generous finder's fee. Still well below retail. When he sold the units, I had to keep a spreadsheet with model numbers, serial numbers, tests performed, sale date, price, and location. I would send them to him weekly because some of them were legit tested models as well. Then he would turn it in after he altered the dates to make it look like he had enough time to run the tests or try the new experimental part. They were still skeptical until I bought up a cow print cooler they had been looking for before I left. It was a custom build for a well-known national ice cream company, and it had vanished. So I told them where it was, and that if they went to that location, They would also find 3 brand new units still with the factory solder pipes. Needless to say, there was a new senior technician soon after. I was offered my old job back but declined since I had a new full job time. I stayed in contact with some of my friends there for a time, and about a year later, I heard the old senior technicians had lost his house, his new trunk that he had spent thousands customizing. He also lost his retirement that he had earned after 30 years. He missed out on the 6-month severance everybody got when the company was bought out. And that location closed only about a month after he left. But wait, there is more. The icing on the cake. The place I went to after that had an employee interview panel for potential candidates. This was about 3 years after the matter, and who walks into the interview? Yep, you guessed it. He had applied for one of our 4 openings since we were expanding. We made eye contact. I smiled like the Cheshire Cat, and he looked bored to see me. I gave him a fair interview, but in discussion, did convey that he had transpired years earlier. However, the application pool was pretty poor that round, and he had technical experience we needed, so they did offer him a position, which he thankfully turned down. I always believed and hoped it was just because of me. Hey guys, it's Crown. Hope you're doing well. I started a brand new channel called That One Story. It'll mostly include stories coming from different subreddits, but will definitely include some entitled people getting their comeuppance. I'll leave the link in the description below, so please subscribe to the channel to listen to the latest stories, cause I'll make sure to post videos on a daily basis. Thank you and have a great day. So this was back in 2007-2008 or so. I have been living in an apartment with a roommate that turned out to be a raging alcoholic. Things mostly weren't bad and we both had friends over and couch surfers and alike. Well, our apartment wasn't in the greatest of shape. Some airsoft divots in the walls from a few jerk friends, carpet stained and dirty, but they were old when we moved in, and so on, but nothing that wasn't repairable. It comes to move out. We have a few weeks left in. I'm at the apartment maybe 3 or 4 days out of the week, and spending the others at my grandparents' house. I got sent to work at a secondary work location, and that made more sense than driving 45 minutes each way. So in my time at the apartment, I'm spending time packing everything I own into my little 90s Mazda Protege, getting ready to move to AZ, and dealing with vacation time and transferring outside my district for work. On top of all of that, I'm spending a ton of money cleaning, patching holes and so on. I leave for a few days and come back to an empty apartment. There are bags full of empty bottles and cans in the kitchen nearly waist deep, and a beautiful hole punched in the wall near the bathroom stuffed with bendy straws. So I take care of all of that, get the stuff to patch the hole, and then leave for a few more days of work knowing that I would have to be back for the walkthrough inspection the day after my last work day. I'd messaged my roommate and told him he needed to get color match paint and paint over the repairs that I did to the hole, and he didn't do it. So I show up at the apartment with a couple hours to go until the walkthrough in order to polish up on any little things, only to find he never painted the only thing I asked him to do, and it's not done. So I run to Ace, get the paint over, and open all the windows so the smell can dissipate. Then the walkthrough happens and they say they can smell the fresh paint but cannot tell where it is. So I must have done one heck of a repair job. Damn right. And now cue the bitty revenge. When we got the deposit back, it was sent to me. And since I had to spend so much time and effort cleaning and repairing the apartment and didn't get any help in return, I instead told my roommate that they charged us for the carpets and pocketed all the money instead. It wasn't a lot of money, probably about half what I would have been paid as a handyman doing the same repair work. My father died 20 years ago and left me a tiny cabin house. He loved that place, built it himself and tended to it religiously. After he died, I couldn't find it in my heart to visit because every rock on the wall, every flower reminded me of him. My mother never cared for it even when my dad was alive, so within a few months, I realized that it will be a while before either of us will be ready to spend time there again. As such, we called up the electricity, telephone, and water companies to shut off services to the cabin until further notice. While other companies complied without an issue, the water company decided this request could be made only by the person whose name was on the bill. Mind you, their fee due to zoning and a well on our property was less than €2 a month. Repeatedly faxing the death certificates as well as the next of kin transfer of the title got us nowhere. Dozens of calls per month. Several emails, in-person applications, smoke signals, interpretive dances, telepathy and so on. Nothing made any difference. Both me and my mother were entirely flabbergasted. So we asked around and found out that indeed the process is unsolvable and, albeit not technically legal, people stopped paying those fees and the water would get shut off anyway as a result. Getting any lawyers involved would not be worth the money. So we did just that. Discontinued the connected bank account and never gave it another thought. 2 weeks ago, while at my family house, I got a call from the water company. They were closing inactive accounts at the 20-year mark. My father's cabin was up. They did, however, tell me that 1. There was a pending sum of €11.93 to be paid for the account to be closed. And 2. The account owner themselves had to make the application to close the account. Once again, I mentioned the whole, he's dead spiel and almost passed over to a supervisor. But in reminiscing demonstration of absolute absent-mindedness/stupidity, the response I got was unfortunately, they have to show up in person, as we need a paper copy for accounts older than X years. Otherwise, we cannot proceed. Now, I don't know how widely common this is, but in my country, you rent the burial site/grave in 3 to 5 year increments. My father's grave's 20 years were up in August, and my mother decided it was time to unearth his bones and surrender the site. As such, we had just been delivered a very respectful package with my father's remains, cleaned and curated only that week. Everyone that has ever gone through this process would recognize that box for what it was. And what it was great timing. 2 days later, I went to the water company's local office. I wore my most purple, silky goth outfit, dark makeup, and oh so heathen jewelry, and carried a large bag with me. I asked to speak to the same supervisor, who luckily for me was in an open space area with her team's director and quite a few more desks. After confirming with her why I was there, she started telling me the whole he needs to be here in person thing again. But I interrupted her and told her, I know what you will say. So I brought him with me so he can tell you himself. I plopped the Ouija board and the box with my father's remains on the desk and loudly shushed the area. Heads turned, her director looked up with a what the hell expression, and the supervisor herself was frozen and wide-eyed. I placed my hands on the Ouija board and just as loudly started asking my father's spirit to communicate with me, show me a sign he was there with us, and reach out to me from the grave. Everyone was silent. People walking by the door stopped and stared. I threw a few "Papa, can you hear me?" in there as well, for dramatic effect. In comedic timing that happens only once in a lifetime, I think a pin or something small fell down from someone's desk behind me, which against the silence was quite startling. Excitedly, I moved my hand to yes and proclaimed I needed his help in the form of his signature from the beyond, in order to, close this account. Finally, the director snapped out of it and came over with an "Alright, I can help you over here. I think this is enough." But hell no, it wasn't. I started gathering my things as I laid into him, How asking to speak in person with an indisputably dead man for over 20 years was beyond stupid. And if I had to put up with her idiocy, they had to put up with the process required to get a hold of him. I also mentioned that denying someone's legal title claim was lawsuit worthy. So he immediately changed his tune that I could of course close the account. He tried to bring up the fee, but I cut him off with a "don't even think about it" and walked out. It's still early, but so far there has been radio silence. My mother thanked me for handling it. But when I suggested she should write to someone higher up about this, she just said meh. Not worth it, it's over now. What a missed opportunity for a water under the bridge comment. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. and he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.